Everything must be arranged to a hair in a fulminating order. I learned yesterday. I must be behind the times, or perhaps it's only a false rumor, one of those pieces of spiteful gossip that are circulated between sink and latrine at the hour when meals that have been ingurgitated one more time are thrown into the slop buckets. I learned yesterday one of the most sensational of those official practices of American public schools, which no doubt account for the fact that this country believes itself to be in the vanguard of progress. It seems that, among the examinations or tests required of a child entering public school for the first time, there is the so-called seminal fluid or sperm test, which consists of asking this newly entering child for a small amount of his sperm, so it can be placed in a jar and kept ready for any attempts at artificial insemination that might later take place. For Americans are finding more and more that they lack muscle and children, that is, not workers but soldiers, and they want at all costs and by every possible means to make and manufacture soldiers, with a view to all the planetary wars which might later take place and which would be intended to demonstrate by the overwhelming virtues of force the superiority of American products and the fruits of American sweat in all fields of activity, and of the superiority of the possible dynamism of force, because one must produce, one must by all possible means of activity replace nature wherever it can be replaced. One must find a major field of action for human inertia. The worker must have something to keep him busy. New fields of activity must be created, in which we shall see, at last, the reign of all the fake manufactured products, of all the vile synthetic substitutes in which beautiful, real nature has no part, and which must give way finally and shamefully before all the victorious substitute products, in which the sperm of all artificial insemination factories will make a miracle in order to produce armies and battleships. No more fruit, no more trees, no more vegetables, no more plants, pharmaceutical or otherwise, and consequently no more food but synthetic products to satiety, amid the fumes, amid the special humors of the atmosphere, on the particular axes of atmospheres wrenched violently and synthetically from the resistances of a nature which has known nothing of war except fear. And war is wonderful, isn't it? For it's war, isn't it, that the Americans have been preparing for and are preparing for this way, step by step, in order to defend this senseless manufacture from all competition that could not fail to arise on all sides. One must have soldiers, armies, airplanes, battleships. Hence this sperm, which it seems the governments of America have had the effrontery to think of, for we have more than one enemy lying in wait for us, my son. We, the born capitalists, and among these enemies, Stalin's Russia, which also doesn't lack armed men. All this is very well, but I don't know the Americans were such a warlike people. In order to fight, one must get shot at, and although I have seen many Americans at war, they always had huge armies of tanks, airplanes, battleships that served as their shield. I have seen machines fighting a lot, but only infinitely far behind them have I seen the men who directed them, rather than people who feed their horses, cattle, and mules the last tons of real morphine they have left and replace it with substitutes made of smoke. I prefer people who eat of the bare earth, the delirium from which they were born. I mean the Tarahumara eating peyote off the ground while they are born, and who kill the sun to establish the kingdom of Black Night, and who smash the cross so that the spaces of spaces can never again meet and cross. And so you're going to hear the dance of Tutuguri. Tutuguri, the rite of the black sun. And below, as if at the foot of the bitter slope, cruelly despairing at the heart, gapes the circle of the 6 crosses, very low, as if embedded in the Mother Earth, wrenched from the foul embrace of the mother who drools. The earth of black coal is the only damp place in this cleft rock. The rite is that the new sun passes through 7 points before blazing on the orifice of the earth. And there are 6 men, 1 for each sun, and the 7th man, who is the sun, in the raw, dressed in black and in red flesh. But this 7th man is a horse with a man leading him. But it is the horse who is the sun and not the man. At the anguish of a drum and a long trumpet, strange the 6 men who were lying down, rolling level with the ground, leap up one by one like sunflowers, not like suns, but turning earth's water lilies. And each leap corresponds to the increasingly somber and restrained gong of the drum, until suddenly he comes, galloping at vertiginous speed, the last son, the first man, the black horse with a naked man, absolutely naked and virgin, riding it. After they leap up, they advance in winding circles, and the horse of bleeding meat rears and prances without a stop on the crest of his rock until the 6 men have surrounded completely the 6 crosses. Now, the essence of the rite is precisely the abolition of the cross. When they have stopped turning, they uproot the crosses of earth, and the naked man on the horse holds up an enormous horseshoe, which he has dipped in a gash of his blood. The pursuit of fecality. There where it smells of shit, it smells of being. Man could just as well not have shat, not have opened the anal pouch, but he chose to shit, as he would have chosen to live instead of consenting to live dead. Because in order not to make caca, he would have had to consent not to be, but he could not make up his mind to lose being, that is, to die alive. There is in being something particularly tempting for man, and this something is none other than caca. To exist, one need only let oneself be, but to live, one must be someone. To be someone, one must have a bone. Not be afraid to show the bone, and to lose the meat in the process. Man has always preferred meat to the earth of bones, because there was only earth and wood of bone, and he had to earn his meat. There was only iron and fire and no shit, and man was afraid of losing shit. Or rather, he desired shit, and for this sacrificed blood. in order to have shit that is meat, where there was only blood and a junkyard of bones, and where there was no being to win, and where there was only life to lose. O rege modo, tu edire, di za, tau dari, do padera coco. At this point, man withdrew and fled. Then the animals ate him. It was not a rape. He lent himself to the obscene meal. He relished it. He learned himself to act like an animal and to eat rat daintily. And where does this foul debasement come from? The fact that the world is not yet formed, or that man has only a small idea of the world and wants to hold on to it forever? This comes from the fact that man, one fine day, stopped the idea of the world. Two paths were open to him, that of the infinite without, that of the infinitesimal within. And he chose the infinitesimal within, where one need only squeeze the spleen, the tongue, the anus, or the glands, and God himself squeezed the movement. Is God a being? If he is one, he is shit. If he is not one, he does not exist, but he does not exist except as the void that approaches with all its forms, whose most perfect image is the advance of an incalculable group of crab lice. Are you mad, Mr. Artaud? What about the Mass? I deny baptism and the Mass. There is no human act on the internal erotic level more pernicious than the descent of the so-called Jesus Christ onto the altars. No one will believe me, and I can see the public shrugging its shoulders. But the so-called Christ is none other than he who, in the presence of the crab-louse God, consented to live without a body, while an army of men descended from a cross to which God thought he had long since nailed them, has revolted, and, armed with steel, with blood, with fire, and with bones, advances, reviling the invisible, to have done with God's judgment. The question arises. What makes it serious is that we know that after the order of this world, there is another. What is it like? We do not know. The number and order of possible suppositions in this realm is precisely infinity. And what is infinity? That is precisely what we do not know. It is a word that we use to indicate the opening of our consciousness toward possibility beyond measure, tireless and beyond measure. And precisely what is consciousness? That is precisely what we do not know. It is nothingness, a nothingness that we use to indicate when we do not know something. From what side we do not know it, and so we say consciousness, from the side of consciousness. But there are 100,000 other sides. Well, it seems that consciousness in us is linked to sexual desire and to hunger, but it could just as well not be linked with them. One can say there are those who say that consciousness is an appetite, the appetite for living. And immediately alongside the appetite for living is the appetite for food that comes immediately to mind. As if there were not people who eat without any sort of appetite and who are hungry. For this too exists. to be hungry without appetite. Well, the space of possibility was given to me one day like a loud fart that I will make, but neither of space nor possibility did I know precisely what it was, and I did not feel the need to think about it. They were words invented to define things that existed or did not exist in the face of the pressing urgency of a need. The need to abolish the idea and its myth, and to enthrone in its place the thundering manifestation of this explosive necessity, to dilate the body of my internal night, the internal nothingness of myself, which is night, nothingness, thoughtlessness, but which is explosive affirmation that there is something to make room for, my body. And truly, must it be reduced to the stinking gas, my body, to say that I have a body because I have a stinking gas that forms inside me? I do not know, but I do know that space, time, dimension, becoming, future, destiny, being, non-being, self, non-self are nothing to me. But there is a thing which is something, only one thing which is something, and which I feel because it wants to get out. The presence of my bodily suffering, the menacing, never tiring presence of my body. However hard people press me with questions, and however vigorously I deny all questions, there is a point at which I find myself compelled to say no, then to negation. And this point comes when they press me, when they pressure me, and when they handle me until the exit from me of my nourishment and its milk. And what remains? That I am suffocated, and I do not know if it is an action, but in pressing me with questions this way, until the absence and nothingness of the question, they pressed me until the idea of body and the idea of being a body was suffocated in me. And it was then that I felt the obscene, and that I farted from folly and from excess and from revolt at my suffocation, because they were pressing me to my body and to the very body. And it was then that I exploded everything, because my body can never be touched. Conclusion. And what was the purpose of this broadcast, Mr. Artaud? Primarily to denounce certain social obscenities officially sanctioned and acknowledged. 1. The submission of infantile sperm donated by children for the artificial insemination of fetuses yet to be born and which will be born in a century or more. 2. To denounce in this same American people who occupy the whole surface of the former Indian continent, a rebirth of that warlike imperialism of early America that caused the pre-Columbian Indian tribes to be degraded by the aforesaid people. 3. You are saying some very bizarre things, Mr. Artaud. 4. Yes, I am saying something bizarre. That contrary to everything we have been led to believe, the pre-Columbian Indians were a strangely civilized people, and that in fact they knew a form of civilization based exclusively on the principle of cruelty. 5. And do you know precisely what is meant by cruelty? 6. Offhand, no, I don't. 7. Cruelty means eradicating by means of blood, and until blood flows, God, the bestial accident of unconscious human animality, wherever one can find it. 8. Man, when he is not restrained, is an erotic animal. He has in him an inspired shudder, a kind of pulsation that produces animals without number, which are the form that the ancient tribes of the earth universally attributed to God. This created what is called a spirit. Well, the spirit originating with the American Indians is reappearing all over the world today under scientific poses which merely accentuate its morbid, infectious power. The marked condition of vice, but a vice that pullulates with diseases because, laugh if you like, what has been called microbes is a god. And do you know what the Americans and the Russians use to make their atoms? They make them with the microbes of God. You are raving, Mr. Artaud. You are mad. I am not raving. I am not mad. I tell you that they have reinvented microbes in order to impose a new idea of God. They have found a new way to bring out God and to capture him in his microbic noxiousness. This is to nail him through the heart, in the place where men love him best, under the guise of unhealthy sexuality, in that sinister appearance of morbid cruelty that he adopts whenever he is pleased to tetanize and madden humanity as he is doing now. He utilizes the spirit of purity and of consciousness that has remained candid like mine to asphyxiate it with all the false appearances that he spreads universally through space, and this is why Artaud le Momo can be taken for a person suffering from hallucinations. What do you mean, Mr. Artaud? I mean that I have found the way to put an end to this ape once and for all. And that although nobody believes in God anymore, everybody believes more and more in man. So it is man who we must now make up our minds to emasculate. How's that? How's that? No matter how one takes you, you are mad, ready for the straitjacket. By placing him again for the last time on the autopsy table to remake his anatomy, I say to remake his anatomy. Man is sick because he is badly constructed. We must make up our minds to strip him bare in order to scrape off that animalcule that itches him mortally. God, and with God, his organs. For you can tie me up if you wish, but there is nothing more useless than an organ. When you will have made him a body without organs, then you will have delivered him from all his automatic reactions and restored him to his true freedom. You will teach him again to dance wrong side out, as in the frenzy of dance halls, and this wrong side out will be his real place.